Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something, well, really fundamental to how we all understand the world. Emotional truth. This isn't just about hard facts, or cold logic. It's really about how our feelings profoundly shape what we believe to be true. How they help us navigate a world that's way more complex than just a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Our human sense of truth, it's not purely about factual accuracy, is it? It's profoundly shaped by this emotional resonance, what we're calling emotional truth.
Right.
Think of it like this. Your brain isn't just some giant database of facts. It's also running this powerful internal relevance engine.
A relevance engine.
Okay, and this engine uses your emotions to highlight what truly matters to you, what information has personal significance. It's why, a bare fact might just slide right by you. But the same fact may be presented with an emotional hook. It sticks. It feels true. And sometimes, honestly, certain aspects of the world might only become really knowable through our emotions.
So our mission today, then, is to really unpack why we humans rely so heavily on our emotions for our sense of truth. How has this powerful phenomenon evolved through history? What's its impact, its profound impact on us as individuals and on society? And crucially, what unique role does AI play, both in understanding and maybe interacting with this very human characteristic?
A big agenda.
Definitely. So where do we even start with this deep dive into emotion versus reason?
Well, we kind of have to go way back to the ancient philosophers.
Right.
Thinkers like Plato, for instance. He largely saw emotions as, well, a disruptive force, kind of messy.
Yeah, he had this idea of the soul in three parts. Rational, spirited, that's the emotions, and appetitive, the desires. For Plato, the rational part absolutely had to be in charge.
Like a charioteer reining wild horses.
Exactly, to stop emotions leading us astray from the actual truth.
But then Aristotle came along and, well, he offered a lot more nuance, didn't he?
Ah.
He really did.
Yeah.
He argued that emotions weren't just distractions. They were integral, unavoidable. They could be rational or irrational, depending on how reason guided them.
So not just bad, then?
Not at all. For Aristotle, our emotions are tied directly to our judgments, our beliefs. They actively shape how we perceive things, even making certain features of objects knowable to us in a way reason alone couldn't. He even suggested that golden mean, for emotions basically, balanced moderation, not just suppression.
And moving forward a bit, Spinoza took this really naturalistic approach.
Yes, he talked about affections.
Right, affections. He saw them as changes in our body's power to act, and these came with corresponding ideas in our mind.
And there's an interesting distinction between passive emotions, which were sort of confused cognitions, and active emotions. He actually thought that gaining cognitive insight into our desires and emotions could be therapeutic, helpful.
What's fascinating here, then, is how these, ancient views connect to this fundamental human struggle we still have. How much of truth can really be purely objective?
Right. And how much is always inherently shaped by our subjective emotional experience. This is so relevant for AI today. We're finding out that just presenting facts, cold, hard facts, isn't always enough for us humans to accept something.
It has to resonate somehow.
Exactly. For something to truly land, to feel true, it often needs to align with our existing emotional frameworks. It has to connect.
And this whole concept of emotional truth, it keeps evolving in modern thought, too. Like Ronald de Sousa, he explored emotions as purposeful, even cognitive states.
Intentional states. And Minong argued that emotions actually allow us to comprehend the world, linking them directly to truth as a kind of value.
We even talk about epistemic emotions, now feelings like surprise or puzzlement, curiosity.
Right, those feelings that actually make us want to know more.
Exactly. They aren't just reactions. They're active drivers in our pursuit of knowledge. They act like a sort of built-in truth-seeking heuristic or a relevance filter.
Guiding our attention.
Yeah, guiding our attention to what's important for survival or maybe just reaching our goals.
And we see this playing out throughout history, don't we? Where emotions don't just reflect society. They actively shape belief systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Take colonial Pennsylvania. The elite there, they believed that genteel feelings, refined emotions, were the bedrock of civilized life.
All the common folk had.
Base passions. And this belief, subtly or not so subtly, justified social control. Or think about frontier warfare. Descriptions of extreme Indian anger and these cruelties too shocking to be described, that language was strategically used.
To mobilize opinion.
Exactly. To advocate for military action, mobilizing people through fear and outrage. It all ties into this idea of emotional imagery and mentality, this whole complex of shared notions that shows how collective emotional states are culturally constructed. They're built from symbolic stuff, rational arguments, ethical ideas.
And these examples really powerfully demonstrate that emotional narratives are far from neutral, aren't they? They are potent tools, often strategically deployed to maintain power structures or even to justify conflict. They really highlight that these emotional truths are frequently constructed, engineered, rather than being purely organic or natural. That's a crucial distinction for us to keep in mind as we go deeper.
Okay, so now let's dive into what's actually happening inside us. The intricate biological stuff, the psychological processes that govern how emotions become truth for us individually.
Right, the machinery behind it all.
And modern research has just completely flipped the script on old ideas, hasn't it? Emotion and cognition aren't separate systems in the brain.
Not at all. They're deeply interwoven. Think about stress and anxiety. They profoundly influence key cognitive functions, things like selective attention.
What you notice.
Exactly. And working memory, how much you can hold in your head, and cognitive control, your ability to regulate thoughts. And these influences, they aren't just fleeting. They can actually persist because of changes in our brain chemistry.
And it's not just about immediate impact, is it? We humans, we seem systematically prone to these cognitive biases that then influence how we feel and decide.
Oh, absolutely. For instance, have you ever been really anxious about something and suddenly your brain only seems to notice all the potential problems, everything that could go wrong?
Yeah, totally.
That's your attentional biases at work. Your emotions are literally filtering what information your brain flags as important, as true in that moment. And it creates this self-reinforcing loop.
Or like if you're feeling down, you might suddenly find yourself remembering more negative things from the past. Even happy events might seem tainted somehow.
That's a memory bias. Your current mood influences what you recall.
Yeah.
These biases often cause us to seek out information that supports how we're already feeling.
Confirmation bias.
Right. While often dismissing anything that contradicts it. It feels better, more consistent, even if it's not accurate.
And then there's this thing called affective forecasting, predicting how we'll feel in the future.
Yeah, and we're actually surprisingly bad at it. For instance, thinking winning the lottery would bring eternal bliss. That's impact biases. We often overestimate how intensely, or for how long, our future emotional highs, or lows for that matter, will actually last.
We also tend to focalize, right? Like focus too much on one detail.
Exactly. Over-focusing on certain details while ignoring others that might moderate the feeling. And we suffer from immune neglect. We're often unaware of our own psychological coping mechanisms, our resilience, that will help us bounce back from bad stuff.
So this creates this weird predictive error feedback loop.
Precisely. When our actual emotional outcomes don't quite match our biased forecasts, which happens a lot, instead of learning from that mismatch,
we adjust our memory.
We often inaccurately remember our past predictions to make them align better with the real experience. It prevents genuine learning.
Wow.
What this means is that emotional truths can become incredibly self-reinforcing, even if they're not objectively accurate, all just to maintain our internal consistency and avoid that uncomfortable feeling, cognitive dissonance.
And if we look at the neurobiology, the brain itself gives us clues too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The amygdala, for instance, is this critical structure. It rapidly processes emotional stimuli, especially threats, and it influences your attention almost instantly.
The fast track.
Kind of, yeah. While your prefrontal cortex, the PFC, plays a key role in cognitive control, trying to regulate those emotions. This points to what some call emotional primacy.
Meaning
Emotional processing often operates on this faster track, influencing your attention and cognition before you're even fully consciously aware of it.
Yeah.
So an emotional truth like "this is dangerous" or "this feels right" can be established incredibly quickly.
Coloring everything that comes after.
Or sometimes even overriding more deliberate logical thought.
And this goes deep, right, into our evolutionary roots.
Absolutely deep.
Yeah.
Emotions have profound evolutionary origins. They acted as adaptive mechanisms for survival, think of fear prompting fight or flight.
Sure.
And also for social behavior. Joy helping with bonding, for example. Even individual differences in how emotional we are, well, they're moderately heritable. Genes play a role interacting with stress in our environment.
And empathy. That feels crucial.
Hugely crucial. Empathy is an emotional capacity with deep evolutionary roots, absolutely vital for social interactions, for understanding each other. This all suggests that emotional truths aren't just fleeting feelings. They're deeply ingrained adaptive mechanisms. They're a fundamental, evolutionarily honed way we evaluate reality.
So what does this all mean for, for you, the listener, personally? It means that your own individual beliefs about emotion, like whether you think emotions are generally good or bad, or whether you feel you can control them, these beliefs significantly shape your actual emotional experiences, your relationships, your psychological outcomes.
Right. So if you believe emotions are bad or weak,
You might actually experience heightened negative responses, maybe worse overall psychological health because you're fighting them or judging yourself for having them. And paradoxically, if you believe happiness is something you must achieve, like it's the ultimate prize. Exactly. That high standard can actually lead to less happiness when you inevitably fall short. It's fascinating. And believing emotions are uncontrollable. That can predict greater intensity and maybe worse psychological health.
but also, interestingly, sometimes more empathy for others who are struggling. Because you feel like, well, they can't help it either.
Right. So these beliefs about goodness guide what you want to feel, and beliefs about controllability guide whether you even try to manage them. It's all interconnected.
And this influence of emotional truth, it extends way beyond just us as individuals, doesn't it? It profoundly shapes cultural dynamics, collective behavior.
Oh, definitely. Sociologically, you can argue emotions are fundamentally socially constructed. What one culture labels sadness or anger isn't just a universal physiological thing. It's a culturally variable label attached to that response.
Right. The meaning isn't fixed.
Exactly. There are cultural variations in how emotions are expressed, the display rules. Some cultures even have concepts like emotional residue, or get this, a fear of happiness.
Fear of happiness. Wow.
Yeah. It truly highlights what we could call the cultural grammar of emotional truth. It's like each culture has its own unspoken rules for how emotions are shown, what they mean, shaping what feels right or true emotionally within that society.
And then there's Emile Durkheim's concept of collective effervescence. Think about being at a massive concert, or maybe a really intense political rally, or even a big sports game.
That electric feeling in the crowd.
Exactly. That incredible, almost tangible energy when everyone is feeling the same intense emotions at once, totally in sync. That's collective effervescence.
Okay.
And during these moments, this intense communal energy can actually transform objects or people into sacred symbols. It forms a kind of collective representation, a shared reality where beliefs, emotions, behaviors all converge and often polarize.
So it brings people together, but can also divide.
Precisely. It's a powerful catalyst for both societal cohesion and intense polarization. It carries real risks of extreme groupthink, and intolerance towards outsiders.
Which leads us pretty naturally into intergroup conflict. If we define that as a perceived incompatibility between social groups, it's so often fueled by these deep-seated emotional biases, prejudice, discrimination, even spite.
Yeah. When a group's emotional truth about another group maybe seeing them as a threat or inferior.
Right.
When that gets amplified by those cognitive biases we talked about, like only noticing negative things about the outgroup.
It creates a vicious cycle.
Exactly. A self-reinforcing cycle of negative emotions used to justify discriminatory actions. And in the most extreme cases, this kind of thinking can even lead to attempts to eliminate other cultures entirely.
And we see this often play out in what social scientists call moral panics.
Right, those waves of exaggerated fear.
Yeah, exaggerated fear or anxiety about some issue, often targeting a specific, usually vulnerable group, the folk devil.
They tend to follow a pattern, don't they?
They do. Exaggeration of the threat, dire predictions about the future, and symbolization making the folk devil represent some larger societal decay. Think Salem witch trials or the Red Scare.
And it connects to propaganda, too. Propaganda primarily traffics in emotions, doesn't it? Fears, hatreds, but also courage, love. It aims to manipulate audiences, often bypassing rational thought altogether.
Yeah, and politicians can strategically influence people, too. Sometimes by spreading outright false information, but also more subtly by altering the choice architecture.
Like how choices are presented.
Exactly, like the order of names on a ballot. Little nudges. These dynamics really highlight how emotional truths can be engineered, constructed for specific social or political outcomes, often at the expense of vulnerable populations. It shows a significant imbalance of power, a real asymmetry.
So now let's turn our gaze to AI, Artificial intelligence. It offers these really unprecedented opportunities to analyze and maybe understand this whole complex phenomena of human emotional truth.
Okay, so what can AI actually do right now?
Well, current AI systems have made pretty big strides in emotion recognition and sentiment analysis. They use powerful machine learning, deep learning models to analyze things like facial expressions.
Identifying smiles, frowns.
Basic stuff like happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, yeah. But also more nuanced emotions like confusion or calm. Things like convolutional neural networks, CNNs, are often used here.
And what are the advantages of using AI for this?
Well, they're potentially huge for researchers. AI can provide objective observer ratings, getting around our own biases when we self-report how we feel.
Right, because we're not always honest or aware.
Exactly. AI can rapidly analyze massive data sets, like thousands of faces, in milliseconds, and it offers flexibility. You can analyze data long after it was collected. Beyond faces, sentiment analysis algorithms classify text tweets, reviews, articles into positive, negative, or neutral. That's used everywhere now, from customer feedback to tracking public opinion online.
Okay, that all sounds incredibly powerful, but what are the challenges? Can AI truly grasp our subjective human experience?
That's the really important question, isn't it? And there are significant challenges. First, many powerful AI models are essentially black boxes.
Meaning, we don't know how they work inside.
Pretty much. They prioritize making accurate predictions over being easily interpretable. So their internal calculations, how they arrive at an emotion label, can be really difficult for us to understand. They can also overlook measurement errors or inherent biases in the data they were trained on.
And context must be hard for AI.
Hugely hard. Context-dependent errors are a big hurdle. Human language is packed with subtleties. Sarcasm, irony, words with multiple meanings, even just correctly interpreting negation, like saying it wasn't bad doesn't mean it was good.
Yeah.
These can easily lead to misclassifications by AI.
And bias in the training data itself.
That's a pervasive issue. AI models inevitably reflect and can even amplify the biases present in the data sets they learn from. If the data underrepresents certain groups, the AI's predictions will be skewed, especially across diverse demographics and cultures.
But the biggest challenge must be actual feeling.
Absolutely. The most profound challenge is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. The subjective experience itself, the qualia, what it actually feels like to be happy or angry or afraid.
Right.
While AI can get very good at simulating emotion and behavior, recognizing patterns associated with emotions, it currently lacks genuine intersubjective experience. There's no feeling inside the machine. This creates a fundamental empathy gap.
So it can't really grasp the personal relevance.
Exactly. You can't truly grasp the personal meaning, the internal texture of emotional truth for an individual. So AI's role here, at least for now, is really to complement human understanding, to provide tools and data, but not to replace our own subjective grasp.
Still, despite these major challenges, AI offers some really transformative potential as a tool for scientific discovery in psychology and human behavior.
Oh, definitely. It can act as a kind of hypothesis generator, helping scientists come up with new ideas. Deep neural networks can refine concepts, improve psychological models, say, for moral decision-making.
And modeling how we make choices.
Yes. Machine learning can develop new theories about risky choices, for example. It can help refine clinical diagnostic criteria by finding subtle patterns in patient data, maybe distinguishing risk groups like people at high or low suicide risk, or predicting who will respond best to which treatment.
And just handling huge amounts of data.
That's a massive advantage. AI excels at processing vast data sets, freeing up human scientists for higher-level thinking, for theory building. And AI might even make autonomous creative discoveries that humans wouldn't immediately spot. There's also this area called choice engineering.
Shaping decisions.
Yeah, where mathematical models derived using AI can actually shape human decisions pretty effectively, sometimes even outperforming traditional psychological strategies. It offers a new way to test and evaluate our cognitive models.
So AI can move beyond just passively observing. It can actively experiment in the study of emotional truth. It can not only understand patterns, but potentially influence human behavior based on these sophisticated models.
Exactly. But as you can imagine, this ability to subtly nudge behavior, especially based on emotional triggers, well, that carries some pretty profound ethical weight, especially when we're dealing with these deeply personal emotional truths.
Right. Which brings us to the broader impact. Relying on emotions as a form of truth is clearly powerful, but like you said, it's a double-edged sword. It has real benefits, but also considerable drawbacks.
Definitely. On the plus side, emotions give us invaluable information, don't they? Happiness often signals something is rewarding, good for us. Fear signals a potential threat. Anger might mean a boundary's been crossed.
They're like quick signals.
Quick insights into complex social situations, yeah. They powerfully motivate moral action, empathy, compassion. They can expand our circle of moral concern to include others and act as a kind of emotional moral barometer for what's socially acceptable.
The downsides.
The challenges are substantial. When we rely solely on our feelings, what psychologists call emotional reasoning, it can really distort reality. It can intensify negative emotions, hinder critical thinking, and actually make things like anxiety and depression worse.
And those cognitive biases we talked about feed into this.
Absolutely. Confirmation bias, anchoring bias, they further distort our perceptions. Strong emotions can seriously bias our ethical reasoning, leading to judgments that might feel right but aren't really rational or fair. And critically, emotions are highly susceptible to manipulation by others.
It's a tricky cycle, isn't it? That emotional reasoning can perpetuate these self-defeating beliefs, really twist reality for someone.
It is. It's closely intertwined with those cognitive biases, influencing perception, emotional responses, even memory. These biases create this self-perpetuating loop where emotional truths become deeply entrenched.
Like an echo chamber in your head.
Exactly. An echo chamber where truth just becomes what feels right, what confirms existing feelings, not necessarily what's objectively accurate. And this can really exacerbate mental health challenges.
And the dynamics of emotional manipulation are just so starkly evident out there in society. Thinking about propaganda again.
By its very nature, it primarily traffics in emotions, fears, hatred, patriotism, love, precisely to manipulate audiences, often completely bypassing rational deliberation.
We talked about politicians using false info or choice architecture. It's fascinating how, historically, that whole emotion versus reason distinction was even weaponized.
Right. To justify things like elitism by claiming certain groups were overly emotional and therefore unfit for politics of power.
But on the flip side, emotions are also crucial for mobilizing people in positive ways, right?
Ethical communication.
Absolutely. Think of Franklin D. Roosevelt's fireside chats. Masterful use of emotional connection to instill confidence, trust, shared purpose during a really tough time. So it's not that emotion in politics is inherently bad.
No.
But it does highlight this potential power imbalance, this asymmetry, where those with platforms and understanding can potentially engineer emotional truths for their own advantage. So when it comes to defining what feels right and wrong for us, moral emotions like shame, guilt, empathy, they play a huge role, don't they?
A major role. They shape our judgments, motivate us to do good, avoid doing bad. Moral standards themselves are shaped both by potentially universal moral laws like prohibitions against unwarranted violence and by very culturally specific rules and prescriptions.
There's that philosophical debate, too.
Right. Emotivism, which basically says ethical judgments are just expressions of emotion versus what some call effective morality, which suggests emotions can actually be morally correct or appropriate in themselves.
And that idea of cultural grammar comes back here.
Definitely, because what feels inherently right or wrong is profoundly influenced by these culturally specific emotional truths. And that's why you can get this real, sometimes tragic clashes between different societies' moral frameworks. They're operating on different emotional logic.
And when we look at who tends to benefit versus who is most negatively impacted by these emotional truth dynamics, does a pattern emerge?
I think it often does. The beneficiaries tend to be those with a deep psychological understanding, perhaps, access to mass communication platforms, maybe high emotional intelligence themselves, politicians, advertisers, influential public figures, leaders.
And the most impacted.
Often, it's vulnerable populations, those labeled as folk devils and moral panics. Also, individuals whose own emotional reasoning has become distorted, maybe due to mental health issues. And certainly, those subjected to intergroup prejudice fueled by negative emotional truths. Entire societies can even get trapped in these self-reinforcing cycles of negative emotional truths about themselves or others.
It points to this asymmetric vulnerability. Power dynamics can really exacerbate inequalities and even create new forms of social control through manipulating emotions.
Precisely.
Okay, so given all this complexity, all these potential pitfalls, how do we navigate this landscape? How do we aim for a better a healthier relationship with emotional truth?
Well, education is absolutely pivotal here.
In what way?
Methodologies like social and emotional learning, SEL programs like Ruler or PathS, they specifically help individuals, starting from childhood, to comprehend, feel, and manage emotions effectively. and to develop empathy.
So understanding your own feelings and others.
Exactly. This kind of learning enhances self-awareness, self-management, social competence, relationship skills, and it even boosts academic performance. Anti-bias education is also crucial.
Teaching kids to spot unfairness.
Yes, guiding children to identify bias in themselves and others, recognize unfairness, develop empathy, and strengthen their own sense of self so they can resist prejudice. More broadly, just fostering critical thinking skills across the board, structured research, evaluating source reliability, asking probing questions, engaging in active discussion. Education in this sense acts like a societal immune system against harmful, manipulative emotional truths.
And this really needs to start early, doesn't it, in childhood?
Absolutely. The foundational importance of emotional intelligence, EI, in those early formative years for lifelong learning and well-being, it really cannot be overstated. Those responsive interactions with caregivers directly influence how neural circuits develop in a child's brain.
So what are the key parts of EI we should foster?
Key components include self-awareness, knowing your feelings, self-management, handling them constructively, motivation, using emotions to achieve goals, and empathy, understanding and responding to others' feelings.
And how do we teach that?
Through simple, everyday strategies, things like emotion charades to name feelings, keeping feelings journals, having emotionally themed story time, teaching deep breathing for regulation, and crucially, adults modeling healthy emotional expression themselves.
So this builds what you called adaptive emotional truth.
Exactly. It helps build a healthier relationship with one's own emotions, reducing vulnerability to maladaptive reasoning and manipulation later on.
And looking at the bigger picture, leading the way in society seems to require ethical leadership.
Indispensable. Ethical leadership truly acts as a crucial moral compass in a world so easily swayed by emotional manipulation.
What does that look like in practice?
Key characteristics include accountability, respect for others, fairness, integrity, honesty, transparency, a commitment to justice, building trust, having zero tolerance for ethical violations, and crucially, genuine empathy.
So it's about more than just rules.
Much more. Ethical leaders prioritize the greater good over personal gain. They encourage feedback and dissent, and they make ethical considerations an integral, visible part of their group's culture. They function as that moral compass, helping to align the group's collective emotional truth with principles of justice and overall well-being.
And this aspiration for a balanced universe, how does emotional truth connect there?
It connects quite directly, actually. The idea links to understanding fundamental human nature, including emotional truth and perhaps even natural law. Think about human well-being. It arguably has multiple dimensions. Well, maybe having the material resources we need, loving, fulfilling our social connection needs, having meaningful goals and strivings, and being our subjective experience, our inner state.
Okay.
Peaceful, functional social systems tend to foster common identity, non-aggressive values, consensus building, inclusion. And if you look at natural law moral theory, it suggests universal moral standards can be derived from human nature itself. Emotional truths like the empathy that makes us want to protect the innocent can actually translate into codified legal norms and societal values. Even environmental stewardship connects deeply to our need for having resources and maintaining a balanced relationship with nature.
So emotional truth isn't just internal, it's a bridge.
It can be a critical bridge between these fundamental human needs and a sense of universal harmony or balance, helping align our actions, ideally, with the laws of nature or principles of universal well-being.
And finally, what about AI's potential role here? Can it help promote positive emotional truth, maybe mitigate some of the harms we've discussed?
I think it has the potential to be a catalyst for conscious emotional evolution, if developed and used wisely.
How so?
AI offers incredible insights into how emotions influence us, how cognitive biases operate, how collective emotional dynamics unfold in society, perhaps online. We've seen it can assist in scientific discovery, developing theories, modeling decisions, refining diagnostics. It could potentially help us identify and mitigate biases in how we process emotional data itself.
So the goal isn't for AI to feel, but to help us understand our feelings better.
Precisely. The goal should be for AI to augment human emotional intelligence and critical thinking, to empower humans to make more conscious, informed choices about their own emotional landscape and how they respond to others, not to dictate our feelings or replace our subjective experience.
Which means ethical development is key.
Absolutely critical. Ethical AI development, transparency in how these systems work, and deep interdisciplinary research involving psychologists, sociologists, ethicists, computer scientists, that's essential.
Okay, so to try and summarize this really rich deep dive today, emotional truth emerges as this powerful relevance engine, a kind of truth-seeking heuristic, totally fundamental to how we understand things.
Hmm.
But we've clearly seen it's also a double-edged sword. It offers invaluable insights, yet it makes us vulnerable to our own biases and to external manipulation, often shaped by our specific cultural grammar.
Right.
And this can lead both to vital societal cohesion, but also sometimes to dangerous polarization, often creating a profound imbalance of power and asymmetric vulnerability.
Hmm.
And AI, despite its inherent empathy gap, its fundamental inability to truly feel subjective experience, is uniquely poised to become this powerful hypothesis generator and behavioral nudger.
Yeah.
It has the potential, if guided ethically, to be a catalyst for conscious emotional evolution, maybe even a bridge, helping us connect our fundamental human needs to a sense of universal harmony. It can help us understand ourselves better than ever before. So let's distill the key takeaways for everyone listening. First, emotional truth is absolutely fundamental to human understanding and decision-making. It extends far beyond just the facts.
Crucial point.
Second, it's definitely that double-edged sword. It offers invaluable insights, but it also makes us vulnerable to biases and external manipulation. We need to be aware of that.
Constant vigilance required.
And third, AI, despite its inherent limitations as lack of subjective experience, can be an invaluable tool for understanding, for modeling, perhaps even for helping us navigate our complex emotional landscape more consciously and ethically.
A tool to be used wisely.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for you to take away. How can we as individuals and how can we as a society leverage this deep understanding of emotional truth to build a more empathetic, more resilient, maybe a truly balanced universe? One where our deepest feelings actually align with universal well-being, both for ourselves and for the world around us, ensuring our emotional truths ultimately serve us rather than control us.
This is DigitView.